Welcome to this episode of Inspirational People. I'm Jason Scott Montoya, and I'd like to introduce you to John Hightower of Arch and Tower. John, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Jason. I'm excited about our conversation.
Yes, I am as well. So through Jessica Lalley International, John and I were both recently connected, only to discover that we both participated in the same Lifework Leadership program in 2014. So 6 years ago, we knew each other. I forgot and he remembered. So, but John is the co-founder and CEO at Arch and Tower, which is a company that helps business leaders transform frustrated customers and disengaged employees into vocal advocates and loyal ambassadors under operational excellence. And so you'll probably dive a little bit into those three areas. But before I dive into my questions, tell me about you, yourself, your story, your company, how you help others, and let's get to know you.
Well, Jason, again, thank you so much. It's been an incredible experience helping build Arch and Tower from the ground up. We focus on helping business leaders navigate uncharted territory. You touched on it a bit. The customer experience, employee experience, and operational excellence is a really interesting model that we've created from just different best practices and frameworks. And it addresses a $75 billion issue, which is the customer experience. Mm-hmm. And these stats are produced by Pricewaterhouse. It is a tremendous amount of opportunity for business leaders and organizations to focus on. My background has been in the consultative space. So to build an organization from the ground up has been a true honor. We worked with companies like Chick-fil-A, the founder of the Ritz-Carlton, Horst Schulze, and a lot of startups and mid-sized firms. Okay. So it's been just a true honor to build something from the ground up, and excited to tell you more about that as we go.
It's always hard to start from scratch.
Sure.
Yeah, when I work with a client, that's because I do content marketing, and they want to, and they already have a library and things going. I can help put to amplify what they're doing, but when they start from zero, I know it needs to be done, but it's usually a long and hard road.
It is.
Yeah.
It's fun though. It's one of those, you roll up your sleeves, you figure things out. And from there, if you're providing value to your customers, and we really focus on the felt needs of organizations, like what do they really need? They may tell you one thing, but what are they truly communicating? When you focus on that felt need, that's when the value begins to happen, even with content. Hey, what are people thinking about? And what are those nuances of how to communicate maybe those deeper pieces of what they're truly wanting to understand? We really focus on that part, but you're hitting it right on the head.
Yeah.
It's a fun piece to build something from the ground up, focusing on those needs.
So how did you get into that world at all? Is this what you went to school for, or are you like me where you got a degree in 3D animation and you're not using it at all?
Well, I did my undergrad at Georgia Tech, and they have an amazing program there focused on various components in the business management side. Yeah. And I started my career in healthcare consulting. I was on planes Monday through Friday, and it was exhilarating to work with some of the best of the best. And I was very thankful to be parts of teams that would go into hospital systems and look for inefficiencies in the hospital. Okay. We started in the financial back end, and then through some of the questions that I had in training, they said, we'd like to move you into new product design, new service design. So I found myself early on in my career working through innovative solutions and having the ability, and the company did a great job of engaging the employees to encourage us and empower us to try new things, which I have now seen tremendous value in that as leading a business, is empowering your employees to do that.
Now, were you married at the time when you were doing that, or were you single?
I was not. I was in bachelorhood there, and it would have been a further decade before marriage entered into the.
I'd imagine with all that travel, that would have been a challenging juggle.
Well, and it was one of those moments. I got phone calls from friends on Wednesdays and Thursdays saying, "Hey, we're going to go celebrate someone's birthday," and I saw myself missing a lot of opportunities, and that allowed me to pivot to grad school and done an MBA at Auburn and focused on kind of finance and leadership. I thought I'd be using more of my finance background, and ironically, focus a lot more on the leadership side of things.
By choice or by circumstance?
Providence.
Yeah, Providence.
I believe there's a couple of things. One, I was, from my personal perception and lens of faith, I was chasing riches rather than I was chasing rubies and gold rather than wisdom.
Yeah.
And I found myself early on in my career saying, all right, I need to seek wisdom. And through that, just doors opened up that led into a really interesting and very fruitful career. And now get to work with amazing team members.
Yeah. Now I do have a question because of the situation, we find ourselves in the world, being in the medical arena, did in the consulting, I mean, was an outbreak something you planned for in the healthcare system, or was it not even in the how blindsided were we that this has happened?
Well, that is a great question that I'll leave to experts. To give frame of reference, it was the early 2000s, and I learned one of my best leadership lessons because of an error I made with a pager. If you remember pagers, I had caused a $10,000 issue to happen with a hospital, and I went to my manager and said, hey, we were using this pager to field issues from the different departments in the hospital, and I'd left the pager on over the weekend. So when I went home, I came back on site and there was this massive pager bill due to this hospital. And I went to my manager and I literally was ready for them to take my laptop and move on, and realize that maybe the end of my stint at that company. And my manager, she was amazing. She said, John, I appreciate your transparency and your authenticity on this. We need to ensure that we don't do this in the future. However, it builds a business case that we need to take to the CFO of the hospital and have a conversation with them. So rather than handle a situation differently, she really worked with me and helped me give context of how to take some difficult situations and make the better of it. So in today's world, what's that mean for healthcare? I believe healthcare providers and organizations have opportunities that we're not there less than 4 or 5 weeks ago. We're in the middle of April, and there's opportunity for innovation. There's opportunity for employees and reaching out to them. I think empathy is a really big missed aspect that business leaders need to think about during this season, is really being empathetic to the employees. Yeah. And let me also voice the tension that a leader's feeling right now. I need to go and apply for the SBA loan or the Main Street lending program. The leaders are rightfully focused on the financial stewardship of the business. However, we encourage people, and we've actually have a service that we are giving away. We're making investments in companies on our behalf of doing a COVID-19 employee survey. It's a 5-step process where we do a call with you to understand the employee footprint, and then we deploy the survey. We pull together the data, we refine the data and make recommendations based on that. And then we support the CEO or his leaders or her leaders in the C-suite with the best ways to listen to the employees through this survey and then respond to them in a heartfelt, empathetic way. Just because we understand right now leaders are really struggling with what's the next best step. So if people are interested in that, please reach out to me at john@archandtower.com. ARCHANDTOWER.com. And again, that's an investment we want to make into the community right now. We've had multiple organizations take us up on that offering. And again, it's a way that we can give back during this time.
Yeah. So how should we be as a leader or as the employee or as a looking out for the company, best interest in the future and the short term and the long term? How should we be looking at this crisis? I mean, kind of alluded to the idea of let's look at this as an opportunity more than anything, but let's dive into that a little bit more.
I can tell you my story, and that's the story that I know. People are dealing with some really difficult things right now. And it could be the CFO or the CEO thinking, how do I best support and understand how to financially keep our organization afloat? Yeah. So there's the short-term pieces, and those require focus and energy. Also want to encourage people, if they have the margin and they have the opportunity, or if they have maybe downtime they weren't expecting, what can you do to improve yourself operationally? This goes into our operational excellence. We have 3 practice areas: our customer experience, again, the $75 billion issue that we help organizations look at; the employee experience. The employee experience is the main driver of your customer experience. Pricewaterhouse came out with a stat. over 80% of the customer experience is driven by your employees and the employee experience. So we really focus on that. And then the hidden piece is continuous improvement. And the operational excellence piece is a focus area that organizations can tend to right now during this coronavirus season. We also are an organization that applies what we're working with companies on right now. And what do I mean by that? At Arch & Tower, we're a professional services firm. We bring in white glove consultative services that is our DNA as the company that we are building together, amazing teammates. And we are saying, what are the projects and solutions we're doing? How do we replicate those through process and systems so that we increase our quality, we increase our productivity, we increase and accelerate onboarding? Those are things we can do right now, today, during this season. We have opportunities to really think about how do we best create net new content that's meaningful, which I can share content on that piece. But to me, it's, hey, a lot of folks in the survival mode. If you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the lowest rung is survival.
Yeah.
And people drop into that.
Yeah.
And it happens at different times. My wife, when she says, hey, we need supplies, I mean, I go into hunter-gatherer mode. And I'm out, I'm going to Costco, I'm gloving up or I'm masking up, and I take care of that need. And then I can go back up into those other layers of Maslow's hierarchy.
But I think in that regard, it helps us to appreciate the lower rungs that we often take for granted. So I've joked, to your point, I've joked with my kids. I said, we're close to Lake Lanier. I said, if we run out of food, we're all going fishing this weekend, you know?
Sure.
Do it the old fashioned way.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about, for me and the content that I create, I talk a lot about living better, working smarter, systems and stories, and these kind of 4 facets of leadership and personal development. But I want to kind of talk about living better and working smarter first. What does that mean to you to live better? What does that mean to you to work smarter and for your business and for your clients? And how has the current context changed that, or has it? Maybe it hasn't. Maybe it has.
Yeah.
You tell me.
I'm going to take that in 2 segments, professional and then personal. Professionally, this is where organizations have the opportunity, especially as organizations move to more remote workforce, to trust their employees.
Yeah.
There's so many times where
tell me what that means specifically. What does it mean to trust employees? Because I think and the reason I interrupt you is I think a lot of leaders think they trust their employees, but in behavior they don't. So let me understand that better.
It's a fascinating clarification. Trust in employees is understanding, and some of this is the balance of relationships and results.
Yeah.
Right? And this is the cultural components that have been created from when your company was founded to now. Like you have that, you have some of those habits and those cultural components coming home to roost, if you will.
Yeah.
But trust in your employees is the key foundation for organizational health. Trust and vulnerability and authenticity are the things that Patrick Lencioni talks about. But when you focus on trust and you can trust your employees, I trust my employees are going to get done what we've agreed to, right? And from there, for me, that's the underlying piece of everything, because we're going to get through it together. We work as a team to talk about that on our Monday morning team meetings. What are the key things that we need to work on? Let's understand clarity. Let's make sure that everyone understands what we're working on and why, and what their role is in that.
Yeah.
So from there, you have organizational clarity that can be driven through the organization. And I'm going to choose to trust and also verify over time. Those trust mechanisms come into play, and the employees feel more empowered. They feel more engaged. At the end of the day, they're going to remember this season is that time my employer trusted in me. And there's going to be that longevity of employee, which everyone is desiring now, especially when the war for talent was a very focused item most companies were thinking about prior to the coronavirus. Now is that time to increase that employee-employer relationship and tighten it up. Yeah.
So I think what I'm hearing from you is this way of working better allows the people that you care about to live better, right? It empowers them, equips them to do that. Yeah.
Well, and organizational structures and systems are so important. especially if you're in the C-suite, really getting the executive team aligned on what's our organizational goals, right? Part of the Arch and Tower name, the brand has a story behind it. So arches span gaps and carry distances.
Oh,
We
okay.
like to do that with our customers across departments, across organizational hurdles. We like to arch and carry the weight with our clients. And then towers lift people up to a strategic vantage point. So if you think about it, in the C-suite, how many times are the CTO and the CMO on the same page? How many times are the CEO and the COO on the same page? And how do you orchestrate that organizational clarity?
Yeah.
So that mist at the C-suite becomes a fog in the employees. So how do we cut through that and create clarity across the organization? We're doing that with an organization that's 118 years old in the Midwest. And we've been engaged with them for the past 9 months. And we started with their executive team. And now you can just see the cascading alignment across the organization. And they're doubling down during this season to invest in their employees. And they're in a manufacturing space, an essential business. And right now, they are leapfrogging their competition by realizing now is the opportunity. When employees are seeing others being either released or furloughed, I mean, employees have tons of information being thrown at them from friends and family and media. When they feel an organization reinvesting in them during this season, I mean, the loyalty of the employees are going sky high right now.
Yeah. So as you kind of describe that and talk about the visual symbolism of Arch and Tower, what comes to my mind is like this whole situation. It's like the tower is now in a fog, like you said.
Sure.
But there's also so much noise. I mean, there already was so much noise, but now there's an infinite amount more of noise and it's like, because we don't know what's going to happen. There's so much uncertainty there. As we learn more and more, we get some sort of sense of clarity and in broad swipes as this crisis unfolds, but it's very uncertain. And so how do business leaders filter that noise to get the high quality information while losing the mediocre and the deceptive information that's actually harmful?
Yeah. Arch and Tower, we were acquired by a company called Fraser and Dieter, it's a CPA firm based out of Atlanta at the end of last year. And it's a 400-person firm. We internally were asked to help with an employee survey, and we were able to gain what were the employees really feeling. And we worked directly with the CEO of the firm that acquired us and helping with that communication. And we encouraged him to be authentic and transparent, acknowledge where people are, then also fortify with, hey, this is what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I'm feeling this and share real feelings, real stories, but then also give clarity on where the organization is and where we are in regards to the market, where we are in regards to the clients, because it's innate, Jason. If people don't hear news, that's worse than hearing bad news. So if you don't hear news, people start constructing their own points of view.
With all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And as a leader, do you want to help defragment people's hard drives so that people can mentally think and be more productive, or do you let them construct their own stories? It's our hypothesis, and it's traditionally proven out very well, that if you can help people understand where we are, there's going to be a sense of relief or at least acknowledgement about where we are. That authenticity drives up people's engagement and saying, you know what, at least they're being straightforward with me, and I can know now what are the next best steps I can do as an employee, as a manager, as a leader, whatever it may be.
And is that essentially how you persuade someone that may be skeptical? I mean, you can have someone that goes to the lockdown mode, right? Do what I say. I'm not going to tell you anything. Or you can go the other side, which you're describing, which is, here's what's happening. I'm not going to be a gatekeeper to the information. Is that your argument to persuade people to go that route versus the lockdown authoritarian mode?
So I see it more as less of a binary and just more of reality, right? So putting people in that binary, like either lockdown or persuasion, I believe there's a authenticity that allows people to self-select where they want to be. And as a leader, I want to encourage authenticity and trust wherever I can do that. And I'm stressing those points due to the organizational clarity piece. If you do that, that helps people align around what can we do as a business together. And hopefully there isn't persuasion, and hopefully there isn't isolation. What there is a moment to say, we're a community. How do we work together? We're all struggling through this, or we're all seeing challenges, or people are presenting challenges to us, but how do we help and think through it? So to me, it's how do you as a leader settle your spirit and understand we're gonna be okay. It may look different on the back end, and what can we do now with minimal data? And every day there's more data. It could be right, wrong, or different. We're not quite sure right now with some of the data that's coming through the systems that we have. And what I mean by that is external systems and media, whatever it may be. You're making almost daily, hourly decisions on what's our best course of action. Mm-hmm. This goes into Agile. I mean, you and I have similar backgrounds and work in this space. This is part where if you're not familiar with Agile, we love to work with organizations on being speedboats over cruise ships. It takes a long time to turn a cruise ship, which is more of where most organizations are, versus Agile is how do we take and synthesize information quickly and pivot quickly as we go through the waters that we have to navigate. Again, helping leaders navigate through waters in times like this is, it's not the faint of heart, but it is exciting.
Yeah, I mean, the big cruise ship that comes to mind is Titanic, so it didn't work out so well. But there's we have crashed into this iceberg, and it is, I guess that's something interesting to kind of explore. Is much as we can sort of apply principles and be wise, there's a reality that this is just gonna be messy. I mean, would you agree with that? What would you say about that?
Absolutely, it is messy. The thing is, I believe what this crisis does for leaders is it creates an opportunity to push into the mess that they may have avoided previously. An example is we really believe in being healthy. That's one of our core values at Arch and Tower. And what that means is we understand people are going to bring their whole person to work. They're going to bring personal issues. They're going to bring professional issues. There's all these things that people are messy anyway. Yeah. And this is just bringing it to light. So now it's like, I'm a mess. I'm sweating right now. You see this sweat right here? Like, hey, but at least I'm being real. Yeah. And we're at the common denominator, we're all humans, and we all have fears, and we all have opportunities to trust people, and we all have opportunities to say, okay, based on the information we know right now, we realize there's gaps in our service model. We can focus on the external, we can focus on the internal. And let's create a cross-functional team, and let's focus on what we can. We heard from our customer surveys, our employee surveys, we need to work on this point of excellence. We call them points of excellence. We're working with the organization right now. We're mapping their entire customer experience from end to end. And for us, the customer experience starts from the digital website, from marketing, all the way through support mechanisms, even the vendor experiences. Yeah. An example is a vendor experience. We ordered a product for our home, a whiteboard, and it was delivered by a third party from the organization we bought it from, a large supply store. And the vendors, we didn't know the difference. They came in and scratched our hardwood floors with this whiteboard. So for us, we had a negative brand experience with that retailer. So me as a business leader, who in my systems are delivering part of my product or service? And let's ensure that they are meeting the standards in which we want to hold ourselves to. Yeah. So this is an example of, during this season, do you help your employees and leaders create focus by saying, hey, try the best we can to suspend the external pressures that are coming. We know those are real. Let's acknowledge them. And then let's create hyper focus on the areas we can improve our service model. So when we come out of this thing, and we will, we're America, we're going to rally, and it's not going to come without challenges, but we fought through so much. We will be better. And this is an opportunity to be leaner, more effective, more efficient. Let's remove from maybe mistakes that were hidden in our service models before, and let's move forward with being tighter and more effective and efficient. And there's bottom line impact for that. I mean, there's productivity increases of 60% sometimes when you look at the maturity models that can be deployed right now. There's so much opportunity for improvement. Yeah. But I also want to acknowledge the challenges that are out there.
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing from you in a larger summary way is a lot of the facades we've individually or as businesses have created are falling away. You know, I think of the end of The Wizard of Oz, you know, the wizard is behind the curtain. Sure. and what we think the wizard is different than what it is. And all of those differences are now being kind of reconciled to what things really are, as we are unable to hold up those facades any longer.
Yeah, and I'm getting very tactical in some of the approach, but I want to give people application points.
Yeah.
And we actually have a 14-point checklist that you can go to archandtower.com. You hit resources. It gives you a checklist to create focus on where you can think about and work on right now. And that's a free asset that we want to enable
I'll put a
people,
link
enable
in
leaders
the
to
page
use.
for that as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. And I want to maybe use an illustration. One of my mentors had shared with me that home runs cover up errors. And I'm a washed up high school athlete. I play church softball when it's back in play. And that tapped into my inner competitor.
Yeah.
And we focus on the home runs. And for the past decade and a half, we've been able to hit home runs.
Yeah.
And now we don't have that. We don't have those massive opportunities. So how do we focus on the errors we're making? Let's clean up our fielding and let's make the proper throws. Let's remove errors where we can. So when home runs come back, we're going to be a more nimble team in the championship team.
Yeah. I think makes me think of Moneyball, they came up with those metrics on base and those had more impact on wins than any other factors. So,
sorry, that's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Think about KPIs. Think about your dashboards right now. Think about your qualitative and quantitative data. These, again, are areas that, again, we just want to give light and areas where leaders can say, we're going to stabilize the financials the best we can. What are some other areas? That's a key area. Do you have a balanced scorecard? What are you measuring? Is it purposeful?
Yeah.
Is it aligning with, again, what the organizational strategy, what the C-suite's agreed on?
Yeah.
Is what you're measuring supporting those key objectives?
Yeah.
We're really working on that organizational alignment. Again, just want to give some tactical tools out to the leaders that are viewing.
So, when you think about, working smarter, living better, it's one thing to do that for ourselves. It's one thing to get grounded. It's one thing to get focused. How do you help others? How do we help others get that grounding? I think of the movie Jurassic Park. They're in the Jeeps, and everyone reacts very different when the Tyrannosaurus Rex comes. Some paralyzed, some run, but Grant's character is he does some good things for people to make sure they stay alive. So how do we be like him and not like the others? And how do we help others do that?
Yeah, I had an amazing opportunity to work with some really inspirational executives. Mark Miller, who works at Chick-fil-A and has done some amazing things there. He's written some great content, just amazing books. I was at a group meeting with him, and he let out with saying, for you to lead others, you have to first lead yourself. And he used the illustration of a oxygen mask. Before you can put oxygen on others, you need to put oxygen on yourself. And that spoke to me in a very different way. I believe so many people are they want to serve others and they want to really pour into others. And I strongly believe in that. Again, I touched on some of the initiatives that Arch and Tower is doing on our dime as investments in people right now in organizations that really need to focus on their employees. But as leaders, you've got to put oxygen on in yourself. And if people are those gritty, long hours types of ladies and gentlemen out there, such as ourselves, we can find ourselves not putting oxygen on. And that's the number one thing. If you take care of yourself, to that baseline, making sure that you are having healthy habits, getting proper amounts of sleep, taking care of your family, you then can start to say, okay, what's that next layer? This is an amazing time. And you can you can adjust to maybe the annoyances of what the coronavirus is bringing up to us. An example is, man, what an amazing time to see your employees' kids on a Zoom call and connect at a different layer, or laugh about things that once you maybe not laughed about. I'd love to see the dress code as Zoom and video conferences are becoming the norm. Like you're seeing dress codes, maybe trend down from where they once were in the office, and get to know people.
Yeah, that's funny.
And then from there, when you really get to know what others are going through, those are opportunities to serve. And it could be sending them warm cookies during the middle of the day. It could be just reaching out and saying, hey, how are you doing? Especially if you know someone who's isolated.
Yeah.
Maybe a single person, maybe you're one of your coworkers or one of your friends. And then maybe you do know those dual income families that have childcare issues. One of my partners, Ryan Lalley, he found this really cool app called Caribou, which allows grandparents and children to interact digitally, and they can read books to one another and play games and all these really neat things. And how can you best support someone when you know what that felt need is? It takes one getting to know them.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about stories. You know, stories shape us, narratives shape how we see the world, and we're creatures that thrive on consuming stories, Netflix shows, whatever it might be.
Sure.
Both fiction and nonfiction. You know, what are some what's a story, parable, fable, experience that's shaped you, and how can these stories inspire us during this crisis?
I believe we're wired for story at a level in our soul that is bigger and beyond us. We're meant for story. I have an opportunity to work with a gentleman who's traveled almost to every country in the world. I've been following him on Instagram. And he's a phenomenal gentleman, but he once shared, stories sell and facts tell. And so many times leaders focus on the facts and not the stories. It's been really cool to think about that in the business application. And you think about story and how we're called into that. It's an opportunity for leaders to craft how they're doing change management. An example is we're working with an organization that is implementing a technology solution. And you can focus on the feature functions, you can focus on the widgets, or you can focus on what's the story it's telling. This organization has got payroll systems that they're overhauling. And rather than focusing on those components, and I've got to tip my hat to Chris Green, one of the partners at Arch and Tower. He said, we need to frame this in a story. And the story is, let's say that this employee, it's not about the widgets. It's about the fact that if we don't have better systems, they're not going to make their mortgage payment happen because a payroll system can cause a glitch in the paycheck getting out to the employee. And that's a massive change when you think about the change management function. How do you couch your initiatives with story? And again, I strongly concur with this story piece and the value of that. And I encourage leaders, take the qualitative hat and put the quantitative down for a moment and think, how can I interject both of those at the same point? That's why I see surveys. Survey is trying to take the qualitative aspects of what we do as a business and create a quantitative measure against that. We're working right now on maturity models. How do you mature a business in the culture space? Culturally, we have an index of where you're moving as an organization. That's a qualitative feature. Now we use surveys and different components of measurement to try to get that quantitative piece. One of the ways that you can kind of reverse that logic is using story. I think that story about how to maybe take that change management function with a financial package is a strong way and a strong business application that I encourage leaders to use.
So how can the stories inspire us during this current crisis that we're in?
I think from my perspective, there's unique ways organizations can leverage story right now. From my perspective, there's been multiple opportunities over the past 2 or 3 decades for organizations to face challenges and either stare them down and move through, or capitulate and move on to their next challenge and close up shop. An example is the dot-com bust, the recession that we went through back in 2007, the Great Recession. For some organizations, it may go back to 9/11. It could go back to the challenges during the Gulf Wars. But harnessing stories from previous generations inside the organization is a great way to cross that generational aspect in an org, right? You may have Xers that experience something very differently than millennials or Generation Z. We talked about that internally with Fraser and Dieter. So they've got amazing tax and audit people, especially for in the small business, saying, hey, how do I start and get off the ground all the way up to serving companies like Delta with benefit packages and stuff like that. Organizations really focus on that business transformation. And we Arch and Tower being part of that family of brands, it's been fun to understand more and more about that cultural dynamic.
Yeah.
We were having a conversation inside the audit department, and one of their leaders said, from my perspective, I graduated in 2006 and 7. So the fact that I've got employment's a really strong story for me to harness versus someone who may not have experienced a down market, right? There's stories that people could call back, and that's a strong mechanism, the callback mechanism.
Yeah, I mean,
right now leaders can harness that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 1918 Spanish flu is a story as a culture we're tapping into, and what did we learn and what happened for this current moment, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
And history is one that is a powerful thing, and as leaders, we need to treat history with due respect and also contextualize it properly for the people that we're leading.
Yeah.
Because people are hearing various narratives and really focusing on what's it mean for us, what does it mean for our team, what's it mean for our family, and really being strong on, hey, what story are we living in as a company, as a family unit? We focus a lot about that at our dinner table. What is the story we are in as the Hightower family, and how do we best contextualize today in that larger story?
Yeah. So now stories can be great and inspirational and helpful and useful. But in the complex world we're in, the complex situation we find ourselves in, the complexity of business, sometimes we can lean into simple stories that can actually lead us astray. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Humans are complex. And when you reduce things to the minimal context or the minimal data point, you have to be very careful of extrapolation, even in modeling, right?
Yeah.
Could be data modeling, it could be sales projections. Well, we closed this deal, therefore we're going to have this huge year next year. Hold on, let's understand the true story. We believe our organization works with organizations in personality profiling. We utilize personality profiles to really help each other understand how one another thinks.
Yeah.
My disposition is to take small amounts of data and race to understand and create strategy. One of my partners, he's on the other end of that spectrum of our personality profiles. So for me, this is a blind spot that I need to be conscious of. So instead of me facing this way, I need to turn around and say, hey, can you help me see what you're seeing?
Yeah.
And what does that do? That creates, instead of us going this way with our personalities, it says, I need you and I need value, right? So then from there, we can come together and say, what are you seeing in this space? Let's be wise about it, and let's work together to make the best decisions possible.
Yeah.
We just want to get that nugget.
Yeah, and I think the challenge there is we see the world in a particular way or through a lens, right? And when we see a story or information that confirms the way we see the world or the way we believe or what we think is true, we attach to that. But the other stuff we just sort of conveniently ignore, right? So part of this is about how do we go, you know, maybe there's more to the story. Maybe I could be wrong, and being open and willing to engage in the stuff that does challenge and contradict what we think and believe, right?
Jason, you hit on two things, challenge and contradiction, and that's where growth happens, right?
Yeah.
And there's some great materials and great systems around challenge and contradiction. I would also highlight a Harvard study that said 80% of success is related to emotional quotient. 20% of success is connected to more of the IQ. So IQ versus EQ.
Yeah.
Majority of business schools, majority of organizations focus on the IQ, and they somewhat brush off EQ. And what we're seeing is now is when EQ is coming home to really help organizations. And what you talked about there, generational perspectives, your own perspectives, that's a huge opportunity for organizations to pour into their employees, because it'll be a bottom line impact. Let me give you an illustration. We have a group where it's a 1,000-person company. They have 60 locations, distributed workforce. They've got their centralized headquarters. working
Yeah.
their executive team on clarity and organizational pieces. But then we've created with them leadership cohorts, and those cohorts are going through a leading change program that and workshop that we've created. And part of it is understanding different people's perspectives, because you said, if you can go into that challenge and contradiction and hear what's happening on the other side, you're going to be a stronger team because you're making better decisions, stewarding resources in a finer way, and looking for opportunities to improve because you're having some cross-function and cross-communication with team members. So I 100% agree with you. Understanding those perspectives are key.
Yeah, that's great. So let's shift from story to systems, whether they're technical or human, we're all part of and creators of systems. And these ecosystems direct and inform how we think and how we act. Your company is a model for that, for shaping the customer, the employee, and the operational experience. So tell us about systems, how you understand them, how you use them, and how they matter in this current pandemic that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, so systems, for us, there's three areas in which you focus. You standardize what you want to do. That standard you can then create systems around. And when you create those systems, you scale. We call it standardize, systematize, and scale. And the importance of that piece is highlighted during times like this. When you have workforces that are distributed, you've got to get information out quickly. Systems allow you to do that.
Yeah.
So again, have more of a bend towards how are we going to create something that scales. Professionally, building those systems as a team are incredibly important. It takes cross-functional communication, cross-functional work teams. We thrive in those types of projects. Again, arching systems around saying what departments need to be working with whom on different projects.
Yeah.
Personally, I have this cycle of every 18 months, my desire is to replace myself. And the goal is in 18 months, if I can understand what my core objective is as director or VP or frontline employee, if I can replace myself every 18 months or build the systems to do that, the documentation, or hey, how can I improve what I'm doing? As a professional, you get seen as a problem solver or a problem preventer, and then you'll move up the ranks faster. In this season, if you're a leader who may not be in charge but have influence and you're creating influence, I encourage you, now's your time to say, wow, let me think about our business. And from my specific role in the seat I play, what needs to happen so that someone could come in and sit in my seat as rapidly and as effectively as possible so that I can move up in the ranks or maybe move over to another department to get a different perspective on the business. So again, I want to give you a different perspective on the professional and kind of a personal value or a personal goal that I have whenever I sit in a new seat in an organization.
Yeah. I very much share that, with the work clients that I work with. I'm thinking of the idea that I'm essentially going to leave. We're going to stop working together. So knowing that up front, how do we equip and prepare you and your team and whoever we need to bring into the fold to do the things that I'm doing while I'm working with you, but eventually won't be. So I think of the movie Mad Max Fury Road. Have you seen that?
I've not.
Oh, okay. Well, the end of the movie there, you think he's the hero, but he's really not the hero. He leaves, and that's kind of how I sort of see myself in that way. So the that's an interesting way to look at it. So with systems, are they helpful now, or are they less important or more important, or somewhere in between?
I believe systems are of the utmost importance regardless of season.
Yeah.
Because when you have a system, you can analyze the system and you don't have to have a villain in the story. The system is the issue.
Yeah.
And so many times, even in home systems or in professional systems specifically, people want to point at each other instead of at something. And if we can create that true north to say, hey, let's understand, does someone need to take responsibility and accountability? That's number one, ensuring that that's in play. And if you have an organizational health in play, accountability should be nested in that. So let me first say, if you don't have organizational health, all these other systems and stuff like that are going to break down anyway, because you don't have accountability to the system. then you just have a house of cards.
Yeah.
But let's say your organization, a healthy organization, you have strategy and alignment. From there, your system is where you can point to say, what are we seeing that needs to have continuous improvement? And from there, your systems, ideally, you have a continuous improvement cycle where you're consistently looking and saying, what do we need to fix? What do we need to refine? It's one of the things I've learned from Horst Schulze. He's the founder of the Ritz-Carlton, led them to 2 Malcolm Baldrige Awards, which during his time leading the Ritz, that was the thing. And it was a really neat program. But what it did is it made him and his leaders look at every process within the Ritz and say, how do we refine? And then based on those refinements, we have to prove by data that those improvements have increased our margins. And just being around that mindset, we've deployed those types of continuous improvement pieces in different organizations we work with, startups to mid-markets. And it's amazing to see when you start creating systems, you can point into the system and say, let's point our fingers at the system and fix that instead of the personalities.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's,
stronger employees there.
Yeah. I think that's great. And I think even just understanding how much we're in systems and how they drive us, because I think a lot of times people, they look at the leader of a company or they look at our president and they're critical or whatever. And not that those people don't have a role in the system, but I think the people put too much, they put too much of the responsibility on that person when the system actually is a larger piece of it. Or those leaders say, I'm a larger part of our success than when it's really the system that's creating the success. And does that make sense? Do you agree with that?
Yes, and there's a leadership point there. If you feel folks saying, what are we doing? I'm working through that now in our organization. Working on my empowerment to our team members to say, what are you seeing? And if you see a gap, I would love for you to lead out and where you sit and help me understand what you're seeing. And I believe that's where you get some really interesting innovations. Frontline team members have better visibility to the employee experience, the customer experience than anyone in the C-suite. And I really strongly believe that the frontline innovators are your employees, and usually they're the ones that are not engaged on some of these process improvements or customer experience pieces. When you look at Stanford's design school, empathy is the number one thing. And who has the best empathy for the customers? It's those employees that are on the front lines. So as a leader, think about systems, think about the best way to get data based on your systems. And third, and the most important one, is start with empathy. Really work to understand what your employees are seeing, what your employees are feeling, and then they're going to give you insights to what the customer experience is like.
Yeah. So when I think about systems, to pull in Marvel movie superheroes here, I think of Iron Man. Iron Man is just a regular man. He doesn't have superpowers, but with systems, he's actually able to become a superhero, and he creates these technological systems, and he can now be just as powerful as Thor, who's essentially a superhuman, and that's how I think about systems, right? That it can make us much more agile, more stronger, more whatever the attribute we need. We can create a system that can help augment our deficiencies and accentuate our strengths. So let's talk, kind of as we kind of wrap this conversation up, life is hard. It can be unfair and challenging. There are also contrasting moments of joy and prosperity. As people traverse this journey we call life, or as company leaders go through this journey, what are your words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
Very timely question. Very, wow, what a question to ask. I had someone send me a text 2 days ago, and he said, what have you learned over the past few weeks? And I quickly thought about it, and I sent him 5 points, and one was double down on employee communication.
Can't over communicate.
I cannot stress this enough. We've surveyed almost 1,500 employees in the past week and a half, and over 70% were requiring multi-week communication from leadership. If you think about that as a leader, you may be consistently communicating once or twice, but to create that long tail, you've got to continue week after week hitting the same communication points. Most folks, it takes 7 times for them to get 1 point. And if you're illustrating multiple points, you just have to continue that communication, right? So double down on communication. Transparency is timeless. Transparency is key right now. That's point 2. Sharing where we are. This is what we're working through. Here's what the market's telling us. It's so important. This is my sharpening the saw season. Going back to 7 habits. This is where I'm looking and saying, what can we tighten up? If you're to look at the desk behind me, there's strategy and marketing and sales. Like, what are we doing to sharpen our saw right now? Is it refining our value proposition? Looking at our customer experience, exploring ways to be operationally more efficient. Those are things that, again, this is a season to sharpen your saw.
Yeah.
This goes back to giving yourself, number 4 goes back to creating an oxygen mask for yourself. Give yourself some grace. You got to give yourself some grace. My wife does a great job of saying, how was your day? And usually it starts with, I didn't get done as much as I wanted to. And she encourages me in her way to say, it's okay. And I need to live into that and give myself some grace during this season, and then appreciate the annoyances. Again, there's going to be things that annoy you, and this is a moment to appreciate them. It could be a child shooting into your Zoom screen, or it could be a long line at a local grocery store, wherever it may be. We've been blessed with so much.
Yeah.
And I know that people are going through very challenging times right now, but if there's an appreciation, the fact that we're able to talk on Zoom today, 2 decades ago, was that even a thing?
Yeah.
And it's a challenge, but you got to look for slivers of positivity during this season. So those are some of the key points that are very relevant and timely within the past week that, again, I was sharing with some friends and colleagues.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you wanted to share that you didn't get a chance to share through the conversation, or I interrupted you or whatever? Anything else you want to?
My appreciation for you. We started and I was like, I probably have more questions for you and everything you're working on. I'm just very appreciative of this time.
Yeah.
I would ask for folks if they would love to understand more about how we work with the CEOs. We work with chief marketing officers, chief people officers, and COOs on kind of our CXEX framework. Please reach out to me, john@archandtower.com.
Okay.
Jason, I'll send you links to our 14-point checklist and some information on this ways that we can engage with the employee base. And again, I'm so thankful for your time. Check us out at archandtower.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook.
Okay. You on
again,
Twitter?
It's a pleasure. We do have Twitter, so all of the social handles that are out there.
Yeah, so we'll link to all those, the website, the checklist, any other ways people can contact you or connect with you, and if someone's interested in working with you, what's their next step?
You can email me directly, john@archandtower.com. I'm on LinkedIn. Would love to carry on conversation there, and would love to serve folks out in your ecosystem and others that hear this message. So thank you for what you're doing, Jason. Thank you for, during this time, bringing voices of hopefully inspiration and positivity during this season that we're in.
Yeah. Well, it sounds great. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Take care, Jason.